We're tiering the defensive play callers in the NFL entering 2025 today on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast.
You are Locked On NFL Scouting with the Draft Dudes, your daily podcast for NFL and college football scouting. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's better than this? It's guys being dudes here on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast. We're the Draft Dudes. I'm Joe Marino from Locked On Bills. He's Kyle Krabs from Locked On Dolphins. And we are your NFL experts here with you daily to talk team building across the league on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast with the Draft Dudes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Want to issue a big thank you, shout out, and welcome to our everydayers, those of you who never miss a single episode. We appreciate y'all being here very, very much. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins.
Joe, happy Thursday to you here on the program. Doing defensive play callers today. Last show of the week for us. We got this July is vacation windows, so there's some travel going on. So we're doing 4 this week, and then next week's hot takes, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, bold bets. My AFC bold bets are already loaded in the hopper, man.
Are they
ready
bold?
to go?
And I was told they were bold.
They're pretty bold, man. I'm expecting some things to happen.
All right. Well, and then it's always fun to kind of do that follow-up show with what we choose to take amongst each other's bold bets. And it was pretty close last year, if I remember correctly. We did it, in January? And there was like a couple that were lingering, but it was pretty close. So it was fun to see what hit and what didn't. But today on the show, looking at the defensive play caller situations across the NFL. And Joe and I individually put these into tiers. Starting out of a maximum of 5 points, then 4.5, 4. And if you're 4 or better, we really like your situation. We think you got a really great coach. 3.5, 3, 2.5, 2, 1.5, 1. Usually the ones are the no proof of concept, just because we don't know, right? So we don't claim to have a perfect process, and I think that's important to acknowledge. But we do like to at least have proof of concept if we're going to grade. So if, for example, Kelvin Shepard or Anthony Campanile as defensive coordinators for new to the role, there's going to be variance with how they perform in that metric that we grade once we actually see what it looks like when they start playing for keeps in 2 months. We're 2 months away, really, from the start of the regular season, Joe.
That's right. I'm excited to get into some of these conversations with you, but I think we have to start by acknowledging our consensus. Our consensus got all the points coaches, and there's 2 of them.
Only 2.
Two Super Bowl defensive play callers last year, and Steve Spagnuolo and Vic Fangio. And I mean, Spags has been the best defensive play caller over the last 20-something years in the NFL, like historically great with what he's got at the right times. You know, even if you can look at their defensive metrics and poke some holes, just always has the right stuff at the right time. And I think that's a testament to what he brings as a defensive play caller. And then Vic and kind of maximizing that personnel with the Eagles. And you saw, certain guys step in there, and some rookies, and Mitchell and DeJean look like ballers. Blankenship, best year of his career. Zach Bond, obviously the best year of his career. So I think those guys are a little bit above the rest. Now, you've got a few other guys in the 5 bucket, but that was it for me and it for the consensus.
Yeah, a couple of guys driving some of the other subsections of defensive scheme across the league with Brian Flores, very unique flavor to his defense, and then Mike Macdonald as a defensive play caller with what they did in Baltimore, and then what he did in year 1. I think you have a lot to be excited about, and he's obviously the leading man of the sim pressure branch that you see very quickly taking roots. That is supplanting the Fangio disciples, right? It was Vic for 3 years was we need to get everybody under the sun that had a cup of coffee with Vic needs to be a defensive coordinator. And now it's Macdonald. And How many defensive coordinator pluses are there from that 23 Ravens staff?
Macdonald, Orr, Wilson, Weaver. We count Minter?
Minter, probably technically not, but Denard Wilson?
Yeah, it's 4, right? Off of a 1-year stint as a D coordinator, and the guy gets a head coaching job.
Yeah. And it what's interesting about it is it really is kind of the mishmash of a couple of different like names that you're really familiar with as defensive play callers. Whether, I know Anthony Weaver talks about his experience with Wink Martindale, and who's now at Michigan, right? If I'm remembering that correctly.
I know he was last year. I don't know if he's continuing with Michigan. I assume he is.
But then like Rex Ryan and Romeo Crennel. So like there's a lot of influences that go into this style of defense. And Macdonald has really mastered the install elements of it and making it simple for the players where they're able to play fast because of how they coach it. So knowing how Macdonald did it in Baltimore and seeing the first year evidence of what the defense looked like at times in Seattle, I think he is very much like a cream of the crop head of his branch of defensive coaching in the NFL.
So your 5, Spags, Fangio, Flores, Macdonald, right?
Yes.
And then I had just Spags and Fangio. Let's shout out the consensus 4.5s or higher. I had Flores in a 4.5 bucket, so he kind of comes in as the number 3. And then we both had Sean McDermott / Bobby Babich in the 4.5 bucket. Todd Bowles, both of us in the 4.5 bucket. So that's the consensus coaches that got 4.5 or better from both of us. And then I had 4.5 for D'Amico Ryans. You had him just below at 4. And then you had 4.5 for Dan Quinn, and I had him just below at 4. So that feels like the tier 1: Spags, Fangio, Flores, McDermott, Babich, Bowles, Ryans, Quinn. That's like
you got at least a 4.5 out of 5 from one of us.
Yeah, exactly, and no lower than a 4 from.
It's a quartile. It's a little more than the quartile of the league.
Just that you might just say the upper quarter. You don't even have to.
No,
don't have to go that quartile.
Well, as soon as Irsay introduced that into my lexicon of terms, I'm never going to let it go. It's it's a little more than the upper quartile of the NFL.
His legacy will remain forever.
That's
here.
Right, the quartile. Here, Locked On NFL Scouting. Any other thoughts on this top bucket? We also had 2 other guys, or I guess one other guy, that got a 4 from both of us.
Vance Joseph. Yeah. I'm curious to see
averaged a 4 from both of us. So that's kind of the top.
I'm the hater on Macdonald. I thought I really liked him, but I guess I'm just looking for a little bit more resume. I mean, I gave him a 3. I feel bad about that.
Where did we end up ranking him as a coach, as a head coach? He got a 3 for me and a 2 from you as a head coach.
Yeah.
So I think for me, I was a little bit more willing to kind of buy into what I know about Mike as a educator and defensive concept guy, knowing what we graded him as a head coach.
Pick it up a little bit there.
To kind of really fully lean into, hey, like he's the guy that got all of these other DCs across the NFL like on board with, this is how we need to introduce our pressure concepts or simulated pressure concepts, and this is how we coach it. And obviously he pushed a lot of right buttons when he was at the helm, making decisions on what calls to make at what time.
All right, coming up next, we're going to get into the most to prove, and we'll try to talk about more than the Carolina Panthers rushing defense giving up 3,000 yards. Folks, be sure to stick with us. Summer sports are in full swing, and whether you're all about baseball under the lights, golf on the green, or high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game even more exciting. You're already following all the action, so why not make it a little more thrilling? With FanDuel, you can get in on the game while your friends are getting sunburned at the beach. I've been using FanDuel to track my favorite matchups, and the app keeps it fresh with new daily promotions and fun ways to bet. I do love those daily promotions, the profit boost. Sometimes you can, like right now, I'm in on the baseball stuff, so you can pick somebody to hit a home run, and There'll be some elevated profit boost there. Same game parlays for Major League Baseball has been really fun as well. And they have plenty of football's futures bets. So whether you want to get in on over-unders for stat projections, division winners, how about coach stuff? We're talking coaches. You can get Kevin O'Connell right now at plus 5,000 to be coach of the year. Imagine J.J. McCarthy steps in, that team wins a division. That might be a nice little payout there. So check it all out. If you're new to FanDuel, it's a great time to sign up because new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if that first bet wins. So open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started.
All right. Most approve.
Let's just get the Evero stuff out of the way, man. We got to. This guy was the worst scoring defense ever.
They also had no talent other than
I get it.
last year.
How often does that matter in the NFL? Where it's like, oh, you had lots of injuries. We give you the benefit of the doubt.
Well, I think it should matter for the conversation with Ejiro Evero.
I agree. And I give him credit for that happening. But you made all the investments, and you have got to go way, 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 way up. He's highly thought of. He's gotten head coaching interviews. He feels like Patrick Graham to me, like 2.0 there.
I think it's the hard part is he's still young, right? He's 44.
Mm-hmm.
And he's been a defensive coordinator. This is his fourth year of being a defensive coordinator. It was 1 year in Denver in 22, and then this now being his third year in Carolina. So I think if you just look at the raw numbers, they were top 8 in yards defensively in Denver in 22 and then in Carolina in 23. But they were 4th in yards and 29th in points in 2023. They've been 14th, 20. He's got worse in 3 years as far as points allowed. Now, what's your expectation for Carolina? You look at the youth of the pass rush. They obviously invested to bring in a number of names. I kind of expect this to be a middle of the road. Like I expect it to have average metrics in all your major measures of defensive success this year.
I think it'd be a great spot for it. Because I don't think it's all figured out. I don't think they have the edge rush figured out. I'm not sure about Mike Jackson opposite of J.C. Horn. I don't know about their slot players. I don't know about linebacker. Derek Brown off injury. There's a lot of questions.
Mm-hmm.
So if I think this team lands middle of the pack defensively, that'd be great. But how many bad scoring defenses can we put out there and still be viewed as this defensive, young, up-and-coming mastermind?
It reminds me of the meme that was out in the draft cycle this year. It says, if he's such a great pass rush prospect, why can't he rush the passer? Right? Like, just talking about sack numbers. And
who was that about?
It was about Shamar Stewart.
Oh, gosh. Okay.
But it was Chop Robinson the year before, right? Chop didn't have good sack.
Come on, man. Get out of here with the chops. Good prospect.
I'm just pointing it out. It's an annual conversation about, well, if he's such an attractive person to do X job, why doesn't he have the evidence that he's good at doing X job?
Man, we could make this job really simple, Kyle, if that's all we did. Right. We just looked at it like that.
Let the number tell you everything you need to know and don't ask questions. and
the latest example of us trying too hard.
Interested to see what Jeff Hafley does this year.
Yeah.
Right. This is a big transition. 4 years as the head coach in BC. NIL era happens and Jeff says, I'm just trying to coach some ball. I'm out of here.
Yeah, I blame him.
So he left, takes the defensive coordinator job in Green Bay. They are very opportunistic with Xavier McKinney. They invested a lot in kind of the middle of the back seven with what they had at linebacker, the safety infusion that they had, what they drafted, 3 safeties and 1 linebacker in the 24 NFL draft. And those guys all showed up in some way, shape, or form. So a lot of impact there. But you look at the cornerback depth chart and what they have, and I think it's the kind of thing where, okay, Jeff, your background's in defensive backs, whether it was Albany or Pitt. assistant defensive backs coach in Tampa Bay in 2012. And you go to Cleveland as a defensive backs coach, San Francisco as a defensive backs coach, DBs at Ohio State, head coach at Boston College. This is kind of your baby. Let's see you flex your muscles here a little bit. And Hafley's well graded for both of us. We both gave him a 3.5 out of.
It's a good defense last year. Yeah.
It's good, very good from what the numbers suggest as far as yards and points and takeaway. They were top 6 in yards, points, and takeaways last year.
I think their EPA was like top 3, man, per snap. They were good.
So all of that said, you look at the cornerback room, and Nate Hobbs is coming in. But they had to need a corner before they signed Nate Hobbs, and then they got rid of Jair Alexander, and they didn't draft a corner until the 7th round. So that, for me, it's the element of what he's going to have at his disposal to where I want to see him really flex his muscles.
How about some of these, like, storied coaches that are in spots where I think they really need him to work out, like Lou Anarumo going to the Colts.
Yep.
Like Brandon Staley going to the Saints. Dennis Allen going to the Bears. Those types of guys are really interesting to me as guys that have had really good runs that are coming off of like down years for them, but going into new situations. I said Matt Eberflus to Dallas, right? I think I did.
You did not, but you did just now.
Yeah, that was another one in my mental inventory before I started talking about that. I had him included. But I think those guys, man, I think are really important for their individual teams to maximize some of their talent. And so those guys are really fascinating to me. I know we're talking about most to prove, and I think that in a lot of ways defines that.
I also have Al Golden in that bucket as well.
Yeah.
Pretty well traveled between college and pro, and was head coach at University of Miami, and then was linebackers coach in Detroit and Cincinnati, and then he's the DC in Notre Dame, and they make the run to the national championship game this past year, and then he leaps to go back to Cincinnati after he was most recently there in 21, and they got a lot riding on Al Golden figuring that out with all those young players. So, guy who's had success at different stops at different levels. He doesn't have the NFL resume. He's never been an NFL defensive coordinator before. But I think it's certainly fair to put him in a name that you recognize that's going somewhere new where there's a lot of pressure on him to perform and have their unit playing up to snuff. Jim Schwartz?
Yeah.
It's kind of tough because we know what he is. We're obviously jumping all around like the middle tiers that we have here. This isn't the order that we have anybody in here, which is probably good to point out. But Jim Schwartz, wide 9, pressure, disruption, aggressive. We just are what we are, and
it's hard with that offense, right? Like,
yeah, it is. But I think of all of Cleveland's problems, Jim Schwartz is probably pretty low down on the list as far as what's wrong with the Browns. But we got JOK out, so Schwessinger's stepping in.
A lot of unknowns on that D-line, man. A lot.
We've got some questions in the secondary as well. I just don't like the forecast there, but he graded well. I mean, I gave him a 3, you gave him a 2.5.
There's a legacy there. Yeah, there's a resume.
There's a body of work that you're comfortable with, but as far as what it looks like moving forward, how long does everybody that's in football operations, whether that's the coach or the GM or the defensive coordinator, just kind of get a pass for, well, the owner wanted Deshaun Watson, right? Before like there's some changes. And that would be my worry for Jim Schwartz. Not that I don't think he doesn't know how to coach by any means.
Yeah, right.
But it's like, okay, like if we don't perform well, are we just going to run it back again next year because Haslam's going to be like, yeah, it was my bad. Right?
Yeah, it's limited the operation so much, right?
Yeah.
Real quick shout out. These are a little bit different than the guys we've talked about, but I think Raheem Morris / Jeff Ulbrich in Atlanta, John Gannon in Arizona, they're Raheem's entering year 2, Gannon's entering year 3, but I think in both situations there's been a lot of investment in those defenses. I mean, Arizona, literally their whole offseason was about getting him some toys to work with on defense. And I think we want to see a little bit more of the Philly results with Gannon. And I mean, obviously the story for Atlanta has been pass rush and defense, and they've done a lot. I'm not sure if they've done the right things, but it's on Ulbrich and Morris to put it together and make us stop talking about those things for Atlanta.
That's right. Want to go to break. I want to mention one more name. And then obviously we have the risers upcoming as well. So that's next. Stick with us. Teryl Austin in Pittsburgh. Game on, buddy.
Yeah, dude.
Right?
You got the stuff, man, for sure.
So this is he's been the defensive coordinator in Pittsburgh since 22. And they have been 10th, 6th, and 8th in defensive points allowed. They have been 14th, 8th, and 1st in takeaways. They have been top 10 in rushing yards allowed twice. They've been top 3 in rushing touchdowns allowed twice. There's a lot of really they've been top 3 in interceptions twice, and the down year, quote unquote, was 11th. We loaded up. We got Derek Harmon in the draft. We're presumably going to figure something out with TJ Watt in a contract year. And if you don't figure something out with TJ Watt in a contract year, he's probably going to play at some point and be really pissed off and play really well. You have Jalen Ramsey. Deshaun Elliott looks like he's a hit for you. You got a contract extension for him amid some transition at safety. You got Darius Slay in here at corner as well. You got long physical corners across the board. Really impressive. Got a rangy linebacker in Patrick Queen that you brought over in free agency, second year in the system. Cam Hayward, Keanu Benton, Alex Highsmith. Like the tough part for me is they're already performing at such a strong, consistent level. And I really want to know how you make these corners work together. What does that look like? And how high is the ceiling for takeaways for a team that was first in takeaways last year? It's really interesting to me.
Yeah, I think their formula to being better on defense is probably being better on offense so they can play more complementary ball. But yeah, there's nothing that you look at from a personnel perspective that's lacking. And obviously the last 3 years have been really, really strong. And I think that's been the reason that they've been able to be a winning team that gets to the postseason. Not any success in the postseason, but it's been a lot of what he's been able to get done with this defense. And now he's got even more to work with.
So I have the stat for you. Pittsburgh has been 10th, 6th, and 8th in points allowed the last 3 seasons. Do you know what their net team point differential ranks are?
Oh, God. I bet you it might be pretty close to 0, if not.
Well, as far as ranks 1 through 32.
Oh.
They're 10th, 6th, and 8th in defensive points allowed, but their net team point differentials are 24th, 21st, and 13th.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah.
So Aaron Rodgers, step on up, help your defense, help Teryl Austin out.
But also just run the offense. Just do that.
But just also just run the offense.
Just do that.
They've also been top 3 the last 2 years in net takeaway. That's their formula.
Yeah, it's big plays on defense. They take care of the football. They make a few plays on special teams. Boswell's been amazing at kicker, and they it's called the Steelers script. That's what I've hallmarked it as because I talk about Steelers all the time.
Because you beat yourself, you're gonna lose a game, right?
Man, it's boring as hell. But the NFL, more games are lost than they are won. It's just true. And the Belichick era is all you need to know. That was they were certainly dynamic at times, but didn't beat themselves. All right, so fast risers. I know we kind of got into the we call this the Macdonald tree.
Yes.
I feel like that's where I would start the conversation with Anthony Weaver, Denard Wilson, Zach Orr. I think I'm really impressed with each one of those for different reasons, with Zach Orr, I love how in Baltimore they were able to really take some hard lumps early in that season and then figured it out. I think that says a lot about his ability to adjust and correct things. With Denard Wilson in Tennessee, I thought that defense was terrific. They just, you talk about complimentary football. Tennessee was the worst example I've ever seen of that. They turned the ball over like 16, almost 17% of drives offensively. Like eventually their defense wore down, but they were very excellent at limiting yards. And then Anthony Weaver, that defense was it top 10 in scoring, top 5 in yards, if I'm not mistaken. And
they had very good raw metrics, yes.
And without, like, you're counting on Chubb and Phillips to be hallmarks of your defense. You don't have those guys. Your linebackers were, I mean, outside of Jordan Brooks, I mean, you really kept on changing parts. At corner, they were undermanned. At safety, they were undermanned, and this defense.
The safety room was supposed to be a strength, and it was one of the worst units on the field.
And you talk about playing complimentary football. They were without Tua for a while, and that wasn't an offense that anyone was nervous about without Tua. And it's like, this guy, I thought they played good ball, and I thought schematically they did some really good things to maximize what they did have. And so I think when you talk fast risers, it's those guys for me that I get excited about. And of course, Jesse Minter, I think you deserve some love, Mike Macdonald, but that Ravens tree has been really good.
I'm going to go out on a limb and say you'll be at least 1 point higher on Chris Shula this time next year.
He was a tough one for me.
This was one of our biggest discrepancies with the voting.
Yeah.
What was tough for you about him? Because obviously the Rams' numbers and metrics defensively last year were pretty run of the mill. Was that like the big concern for you? In his last year was his first year as defensive coordinator in Los Angeles with the Rams.
Yeah, they're bottom 8 in the league in yards per run, yards per pass. I felt like they were like a feast or famine defense. And I like some of the force the issue mindset that they have. I just want to see that. I think they guys got to find a little bit more consistency with their overall operation, man. They got gashed. They had some big time black eye games on defense, but obviously a lot of really good and a lot of young players. Like, I think that we're going to learn more this year as some of those players gain some experience. They've turned over their linebackers a little bit. They've kind of reimagined some of their corner ideas, younger players in the front. I want to see it kind of come together a little bit more. So what I give him give him a 2. Yeah. He's kind of in this bucket of like, all right, you got some time, but I need to kind of like see it. That was my thought with him a little bit more, a little bit too much variance there.
And I think it's totally fair to call out, but we have talked about this being a big time program development organization and the youth movement that they went through. And they did get gashed in the run game, but then they signed Poona Ford in free agency. I think that's going to help a little bit because Bobby Brown was a good player, but how often did Bobby Brown play on the nose?
Not as much as he should.
He really didn't, right? So was that because Bobby Brown can't play on the nose? Was that because they thought Bobby was better as a 4-eye or a 3? What? We won't know that answer. And hopefully Poona Ford can give you a little bit more clarity there. But Chris's background with the Rams has really been with the outside linebackers and the linebackers. Was kind of where he was a college teammate of McVay at Ball State. And how often have we talked about the linebackers in LA and who they've had? And it's like, I mean, they get by, but you look at the names and you're like, I would really like to know what it would look like with some investment in the room, right?
Yeah.
And I think I'm impressed with that track record. And then parlaying it into being the defensive coordinator with all of the youth, with 2 top 50 rookies playing on the defensive line. So you had investment, and you saw the flashes from Fisk and Verse and how that all ties together. And some free agent additions where they bring over Nate Landman and Poona Ford, and everybody else is kind of running it back. And it's no longer his first year in the system trying to replace Raheem Morris. By the way, He is Don Shula's grandson. So I got to point it out.
It's a required talking point, right?
That's right.
Yeah, I hear you.
Family legacy, right? Like,
right.
Have high expectations for the Shula name, although Mike and David didn't really live up to those hopes and dreams. So Chris is the one that's going to do it.
He's going to save the legacy. Well, I think Don pretty much will take.
Don's got the Shula NFL legacy.
He was all right
under lock and key. Yeah.
Kelvin Shepard, Anthony Campanile, Terrell Williams. Are those the first timers? I know there's a lot of newer.
Al Golden technically is
his first DC
his
gig
first
in the
NFL
league.
defensive coordinator job. Yes.
No pressure there, huh? Come fix the Bengals defense so that Joe Burrow can't get shut out of the playoffs again. but your personnel's worse, and you're probably not going to have Trey Hendrickson. So all the best. We wish you.
No, they'll figure Trey Hendrickson.
Will they? Will they?
The player that has the most, the coach that has the most to work with from a personnel standpoint out of those four, Golden, Shepard, Campanile, and Williams, is
Shepard.
Is it? Or is it Williams?
Come on, man. Oh, I'll take Detroit for sure.
The corner situation.
Terry and Arnold and DJ Reed ain't bad.
Pass rusher not named Aiden Hutchinson, who's coming off a season-ending injury.
Yeah, I'm concerned about that.
Ali McNeil.
What those safeties, O'Brien, Branch, and Kirby Joseph, man.
Yeah.
Me? Jack Campbell, Anzalone. I wish Ali McNeil and Aiden Hutchinson weren't coming off of ACL or whatever they had.
If those guys were healthy and they were coming in full bore, and like Aiden should be fine for the start of the season, but we want to know what he looks like.
Yeah.
Right? Like I would say Detroit.
They need another edge though, too. When are they signing Zadarius Smith? What's happening here?
Right, just quit farting around and get it done. Right?
We're not doing Marcus Davenport and Josh Pascal, or the other two, right? Like
I don't know. Like New England, for the second time in 5 years, spent the most in free agency than any other team.
Oh, their defense. Yeah, wait till you hear my bold bet on them. Their defense is going to be drastically better.
Carlton Davis with Robert Spillane and Harold Landry and Milton Williams. And they paid handsomely for it, but that mixes in with Keon White and Barmore's back healthy and Christian Gonzalez. And
I got a feeling they're not going to be bottom five in scoring like they were the last 2 years.
Well, and if they are, we know who to blame.
Yeah.
Be terrible. I think the point being, I think Williams and Shepard will both be very well. And I like Anthony Campanile. I developed a great deal of respect for him during his time in Miami. So I like all four of these new guys. But the pecking orders, you got to go out and execute for us to move you up. So that it?
That's it.
All right. Kyle Krabs, Joe Marino, we appreciate you guys as always for checking out the show. Make it a great rest of your day. Make it a great weekend. And we will be back again on Monday as we get into Hot Takes Week on Locked On NFL Scouting.